For over 5 decades, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area has led the fight for racial, economic, and immigrant justice, staying at the forefront of change through groundbreaking litigation, bold policy advocacy, free legal services, and impactful storytelling. We align our legal expertise with the needs of grassroots movements to foster resilience, equity, and justice.
The asylum program vets cases. They have often experienced unspeakable traumas in their countries of origin that have necessitated them to seek asylum in this country. Then we work with individual law firms to partner on those cases.
During my first year as an associate, we had a case that had been with the firm for many, many years. So that case was an individual who had identified as transgender and had suffered a series of very violent attacks based on their identity.
We finally had success in a grant of permanent protection from deportation for our client.
She was so excited. We were in the courtroom. The judge was excited, and she came around. She gave everybody a hug, and it was just really exciting to see. We'd put in so much work.
One of the incredible aspects of working with Morrison Foerster was the really holistic approach that they took to client representation. Throughout that process, a human being has different and varying needs, and Morrison Foerster met those clients' needs at every turn.
The individual had previously stopped their transition due to the number of violent encounters that they had in their past, in their home country. After they won their case, they were able to access benefits that allowed them to begin looking into the transition process again and living authentically as themselves. As an immigrant myself and a queer person, working with communities that don't have access to the benefits that I'm afforded here is incredibly impactful. And as a first year, I didn't have as much direct contact with clients, and working with this client directly and really getting a chance to do a lot of the substantive work was just really, really meaningful for me and really important in my development as well.
In this case, we represented 3 father-son pairs who were separated at the border, and this case was about obtaining monetary compensation for the harms that they suffered. We used the Federal Tort Claims Act, the FTCA, which allows plaintiffs to sue the federal government under state tort laws.
The emotional stakes for them of having their stories told before somebody that they've never met before, aka a judge, and to demand accountability from an entity that is a million times bigger than them. It's the United States government, and that takes guts and it takes courage. And the Pillsbury team were constantly reassuring our clients that their courage would not be in vain.
Our clients came to the United States. They are indigenous Guatemalans. They spoke only their indigenous languages of Quechua and Mam. When they were apprehended at the border, arrested, booked, and detained in what were known as hileras or ice boxes because of how frigid they were. Then forcibly separated, children put in one cage and the adults packed into another. One pair that I represented was separated for 9 months, and much of that time, neither father nor son had any knowledge of whether their family member was even still alive.
A large law firm was throwing their weight behind their case, and that just made them feel like their voices were amplified even louder.
There's no dollar amount that can undo the experience and undo the trauma, especially for the children. But these settlements will help these families move forward in a way they absolutely could not have without the money.
This case and all family separation FTCA damages cases were fundamentally cases of reparations. Those people successfully came out of that situation with their lives, and they came out of that situation with the gusto to force the government to take accountability for its actions.
You see on their faces that they almost can't believe that someone is working for them and fighting for them, like for a long time, for years.
It is so powerful to stand behind a client and see them magnify their own humanity. I mean, it's healing for yourself. It is healing for the other person. and it will help you grow in professional ways and personal ways.
Legal Services for Entrepreneurs is a program part of Lawyers Committee that matches small business owners in the Bay Area with attorneys at no cost to the business owner to prevent displacement and contribute to economic justice.
The small business owners I've worked with are the same people that I interact with every day. The ones who make my morning coffee, cut my kids' hair, or dry clean our clothes. But on the surface, you wouldn't guess that they may be navigating legal issues, dilemmas. But working with the LSC has widened my perspective in that sense, that the law isn't just about creating frameworks for corporations. It quietly shapes how you and I act and interact every day. I like to think that our work is an invisible thread that helps hold it all together.
These clients have built their businesses from the ground up. They are not helpless and they are not afraid to stand up for themselves. So attorneys like Eugene are able to represent these small business owners so they can go on to create self-sustainability.
Small business is not just commerce, it's connection, the heartbeat of an ecosystem. They're what give neighborhoods their character. And as an attorney, I like to think that in some small way, I've helped nurture this ecosystem.
You're not only representing the business or the individual, you're representing their families, their neighborhoods, their kids. You will be an attorney for a real person and carry on that goodwill, and that goodwill spreads throughout the community.
You're connecting with people who need solutions they can actually use right there and then. It's the kind of work where your expertise doesn't just sit in a document. It unlocks opportunities that would otherwise stay out of reach.
That Start Small, Think Big. We are a nonprofit organization supporting entrepreneurs throughout the nation, and we are able to coordinate one-on-one opportunities for small businesses to meet with attorneys and finance experts who can help folks expand and grow their business.
Start Small, Think Big has been working with LSC for a number of years now, and in the past year we decided to launch the Immigrant Business Legal Series together and the Juneteenth Legal Series. We wanted to focus in particular on communities that are often most marginalized and often under-resourced.
The Immigrant Business Legal Series, for example, we focused on language access. We understood that it was important for folks to have legal language in their native language. And then for the Juneteenth Legal Series, we highlighted specific legal hurdles, for example, access to capital. Unfortunately, Black entrepreneurs and immigrant communities have often been left out of access to capital. Thankfully, our financial program at Start Small has the access to our CDFI partners who provide resources and information about how to access capital.
For both our Immigrant Business Legal Series and our Juneteenth Legal Series, we offered the legal clinic where folks were able to meet one-on-one with an attorney and get their legal questions answered.
Not only to empower entrepreneurs, but to continue to build more inclusive economies, creating long-lasting impact for underserved communities.
After the brutal murder of George Floyd in 2020, Sacramento became a hotbed of protests from Black Lives Matter and other racial justice advocates trying to push for transformative change within the police department, both in Sacramento and across the country. The protests that arose out of that were faced with brutal violence by the Sacramento Police Department, and what we saw thereafter during the 2020 election is that there were Stop the Steal protesters, far-right protesters, that were not being treated the same way, that were being protected by the police. And this case is really about exposing the violence that the Sacramento Police Department subjected racial justice protesters to, and ensuring that there are changes to policies to make sure that that sort of discrimination doesn't happen again.
We needed to design a statistical sample and a coding scheme to analyze the body camera footage from those 2 protests that had been submitted by the Sacramento Police Department.
NERA was able to take hundreds of hours of body-worn camera footage from the Sacramento Police Department and show through statistics this fact that there was disproportionate violence, use of force, discriminatory treatment against racial justice protesters as compared to far right-wing protesters.
We developed codes to analyze systematically the types of events that were occurring in these videos, so different types of police force being used at these protests. Once we created that data set, we could run statistical tests to evaluate whether there was a difference in the use of police force at these 2 types of protests.
There was less than 2 months that we had to go from first looking at these videos to creating a report, and they worked with us tirelessly, day by day to make sure that everything was done both quickly and effectively.
The Sacramento Police Department had argued that part of the explanation for differential rates of force was that protester behavior at these events differed. And I had a deposition, and I was able to explain the data that we had and the analysis we created with statistical precision and reliability to say you can't explain away the differential use of force because of protester response.
This case is a perfect example of the broader mission of Lawyers Committee, which is fighting against injustice and ensuring that people have the right to speak up, fight for what they believe in, and expose abuses of power.
We don't often have the opportunity to work on cases that are both so local and so meaningful in terms of their potential impact in terms of social justice.
If you're hesitant at all about whether or not you should take on one of these cases, I'm here to reassure you that you definitely should.
Pro bono work is different. You see the results up close. A business gets off the ground, or a struggling owner avoids a costly mistake.
Lawyers need to rely on evidence and storytelling, and people like us and from organizations like ours can really help contribute to that.
I myself, as a formerly undocumented person, had to be the one to help my parents navigate systems, especially legal systems. And I wanted to be able to ensure that as a person who has and can navigate some of these systems, be able to help others go through that process.
When we see injustices, there is a way to fight back, and we should fight back.
At Lawyers Committee, we know that justice is not a static goal. It's a journey. And with the strength of our clients, our pro bono partners, and volunteers, we will continue to walk this path. With those now in power actively attacking civil rights, particularly those of immigrants, our work is more critical than ever. Our communities need to know they can count on us. Help us meet this need by continuing to support Lawyers Committee. We can't do this work without you.